welcome back to Three Crows Forge. Today we're going to be making a leaf, and what I'll be using here is a piece of 3/8 square stock, and it ain't got to be pretty. Just use whatever you got. You can even use 1/4 inch for it. Probably clean this up a little bit because it's got a nice little edge on this end here. I'll probably do that while the forge is heating up. It's already been lit, so I'm going to do that real quick. Got this bad boy in an estate sale over the weekend. She's rough. Took no time at all. Alright, so we got the edge cleaned up. And don't worry about this bend here. I might straighten that out just for aesthetic purposes, no telling. But we're going to get it up to the nice red heat to where we can work it and go from there. Some folks like to use bigger hammers than what I've got here. I think this is about a 16-ounce ball peen hammer. I do have my bigger boy here. I use this for a bit thicker metals, about 5/16 or so. This one tends to do me just fine. The first thing we're going to do is put a taper on the end of that piece there, and it's going to be a fairly small taper, and it's just going to come to a sharp point, and we'll get a close-up of that when I get done with it. And for now, we're just going to wait for it to heat up. There is a downside to forging outside, and that is that the sunlight cools your metal. And what that means is, right now the metal doesn't look very hot, but if I pull it out and put it into the shade, it would look a lot hotter in the shade than it does in the sunlight. In the forge, it didn't look like it was ready to go, but I can tell now that it is. I'm going to straighten this out just so it's a little bit easier to hold. Bring it back up to heat. With the taper, again, just hold it up at an angle, and you're only going to hit the two sides towards the end of the anvil. And we just want this to be a very small taper. Straighten it out, put a little bit more heat on it. Just work those two sides consistently. Your anvil will do the work on the other sides. Straighten them up if you got to, but really shouldn't have to do too much work. May have to switch to the bigger hammer. It's not moving nearly as quick as I wanted to. I need a haircut. Getting shaggy. Getting a bit of fish lip on it. If you get a close-up of this, I'll show you what I mean. You see these two pieces weren't quite even, so they're fish lipping is what it's called. So when I start bringing it to a point, it's going to form a cold shut, and we don't want that to happen. Cold shut is just basically where it kind of folds in on its over itself and doesn't weld. So when that happens, I may use the file and do a hot file on it and bring it down so it's even and get it cleaned up. I got a couple of guests at the forge today. They're helping me out with camera angles. We got Anthony over here and Nick, he's over here. Y'all can't see him because they're too afraid to step in front of the camera, I guess. Step over here, y'all beautiful bastards. How's it going? So this video is going to have extra camera angles. It's going to be fancier than all the other ones. Finish this taper up and get rid of that fish lip. So we got the nice point on it, and see exactly where it's fish lipping. So we got fish lips here, and I'm going to use file it down so we get that out of there so we don't have a cold shut. That should do it. So now we're going to have to bring it back to a point, and it shouldn't fish lip now because everything's fairly even on it. Bring the temperature up to on the forge a little bit, running a little low. Alright, so the taper's there. We're good to go. And at this point, just want to straighten everything out, make sure it's all nice and even. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do a half hammer blow or half face blow. Maybe about, let's say this about 3/8 taper starts. Get the heat on there. That's where your hammer strikes. Half on the anvil, half off. That's where you want your metal to be, and it's going to leave an indentation. And you're going to rotate it back and forth. And this part will become your leaf. This will become your stem on the leaf. We'll get to that in a bit. So again, about 3/8 to 1/2 inch past your taper. Half face blow, half on the anvil, half off. Alright, good and marked. Heat it back up, and we're going to start thinning this part down without touching this part. I live in a residential area, so you're going to hear cop cars and people weed eating, lawn mowing, and all sorts of stuff. I can't apologize for that. It just happens. Part of life. Alright, so where we've got those marks, we're going to continue to rotate back and forth and keep thinning that area down. You can see there where it's thinning out. It's going to take a couple of heats to get it to where you want it to be. At this point, you can start evening everything out. Get it about where you want it. Get your hammer marks out. Keep everything nice and straight. Now the leaf part might start tilting up on you. That's fine. Take care of that later on down the line. And there are thousands of blacksmiths in the world, and each one is going to do a leaf differently. You give each one a forge and an anvil, a hammer, and some tongs, and say make a leaf. You're going to get a different leaf on each one. So I'm going to draw this out a little bit and just thin it out some before I actually start making the leaf part. Just get it a little bit thinner, a little bit more even on everything. And then we're actually going to start rounding this square out before we cut off what we don't need. So we're just thinning this part out here. Want it to be all nice and even. And as you rotate, you can tell which parts are thinner, which parts aren't. bring them all even. Or even if you want the stem to be widened as it comes out. I mean, hey, however you want to do it, it's your leaf. So I'm going to thin that out just a bit more, just for my personal taste. So basically all we're doing now is drawing out where we want the stem to be. So next heat, you can see where I've thinned it out to a certain point. Next heat, I'm actually going to cut this off and just use the rest of this to make the stem. We got that good and hot. All right, so now we got it fairly squared up, nice and even. I'm gonna throw another heat on it, and I'll switch to my smaller hammer just to get it rounded out. And I'll show you how to do that here in just a second. So when you rounded out a piece of square, you want to hold it up on the edge and hit one corner and then flip it and hit another corner. Again, the animal will do the work on the other side. Almost as much as what you put into it. And you'll start to get an octagon shape. Then start hitting those corners on the octagon. Just doing a bit of straightening out here. See it starting to round out from where it was square. I'm gonna have to do a bit of refinement on it on my next heat, but it's just about there, about halfway up, maybe a little bit more. But we're gonna make it nice and round. Don't worry about it. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to heat up this part and turn this tapered part into the actual leaf. Alright, we're going to hit it on the top edge where we've made our little divots here and here. We're going to hold it on the edge of the anvil and basically start smacking it down. You want your hammer strikes to be nice and even. To draw it out. And you see it's getting that pretty little leaf shape. So we're going to throw it back in, and the next thing we're going to do is put the veins in. Now for this next bit, we'll need to get this flipped over to the right side, first and foremost. Then we'll need a little chisel. There we go. And you kind of want to aim it, center it. And you don't need to tap too hard. Sometimes your leaves will be a little bit thin, and you don't want to cut through. And we're just adding little veins to make it look more like a leaf. That's all. And you can decorate this however you feel. Now we got our veins in it. It's not perfect. I could have done a bit better on it, but I don't think it looks too bad. So the next thing we're going to do is heat it up, and you'll see these little divot marks in this stump here that holds my anvil. We're going to heat this up and give the leaf a nice little curl.
Go.
You want your veins to be face down. Use a divot of the wood and the ball part of your ball peen hammer. And it's going to get smoky, and that's alright because it smells fantastic.
What kind of wood is that?
Oak, I believe. I'm not exactly sure.
Well, it smells nice.
And you see, it gives it that nice, natural kind of curve like leaves do. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to heat this up, and we're going to use scrolling tongs to curl the stem up a little bit. So now we're going to put a little twist and umph in the stem. And what we do is we use scrolling tongs, which are round all the way so they don't leave marks. So you just twist. Make sure not to burn yourself. And you can do this and make it look however you want to. And there we go. So the next thing we're going to do is, actually right now, brush it. And it should still be hot enough for me to put paste wax on, put the protective coating on. Brush is here. Get all that excess slag off. Probably still a bit too warm to put this stuff on, but we'll see. Because we just want it to smoke. We don't want it to burn off. There we go. Want it to melt into the metal. Give it that protective coat. All the way around. Use your brush one more time to get the excess off, or just, you know, shoot it off the end. Still too hot to touch, but there you have it. Nice little leaf. Thanks again for tuning in to Three Crows Forge, and as always, keep those fires lit.